You are not meant to be healing all the time in the way that the spiritual community suggests, at least not in the way that you define healing as some very difficult, lifelong journey that very few ever achieve. Healing means to make whole, but it doesn't suggest that you are broken. To make whole is to remember that there is one source consciousness from which we all come from. You and I and everyone else is just an individuation of that source consciousness. And when you return your awareness back to the one, you begin to remember that you are an extension of the one. In this remembering, you also realize that as an individuated extension of the one, you hold its powers, which are creation or manifestation. So when you start to define healing more as creation or manifestation, it's easier to understand that as you travel your awareness back to the one, you can essentially transcend the wounded experience. Healing is not sitting in your therapist's office all day long, although if you find that helpful, there's nothing wrong with that. Healing is truly transcendence. It is an ability to move your awareness from the wounded experience into higher levels of awareness where there is more potential and possibility to experience a non-wounded life. In that movement of consciousness, you have to understand that the consciousness body is opening, and it's opening to potential and possibility. It's opening to greater meaning, and it's opening to more co-creative forces that pull you from the wounded experience and into the experiences that you desire and deserve. What's most challenging for you is to not realize that you are one, that you are not separate, but you are only an individuated expression of the one. Think of yourself as God focused on one experience that you're having, and God is focused on this different experience as it pertains to your brother or your husband or your cousin. Every single one of us is just an individuated expression of God, and it is just focusing on an experience. So in order to focus on a new transcended experience where you move beyond the wounds, you must accept that there is a creative process in it. It is not always the therapeutic part. It is a creative process where you begin to focus the awareness on the experiences you wish to have as opposed to the difficult experiences that you have had. Now, part of this focus comes from the lessons that your soul came here to learn. Every single soul comes to learn in order to return back to the one. The learning process is the map back to the one. And oftentimes the learning or the lessons are very challenging, because if they weren't challenging, then you wouldn't wake up the consciousness body. You can think of it as the alarms from the older days, from the 1980s, 1990s, where they were very loud and disruptive so that you would get out of bed. Well, that is largely like the lessons that we agree to learn. Now, many of you will ask, as it pertains to lessons, how about a young innocent child who was beaten and abused? Did they choose that lesson as a means of remembering? How would you justify that? Well, there is no justification of anything at all that is not justice itself, and justice itself is love. So if you feel that accepting that we choose our lessons, and oftentimes those are difficult, and that choosing steers you away from love, then you are meant to put that concept aside. It is always important when you're looking at spiritual concepts and you're looking at things like manifesting, healing, creation, that you take what serves you. And you know what serves you if it leads you back to love, which is the one. Part of our process of extracting lessons, messages, and gifts from our experiences allows us to come back to the whole. So when Lisa, me, who's delivering this message, first started her journey to understanding and remembering and awakening to the One, she was in a deep state of grief, remorse, regret, and shame. Feelings that she had been trying to heal for decades in therapy. Therapy, again, is not a bad thing if you feel that it empowers you through the healing journey to actually start creating the new manifestation that is not the wounded experience. But for many of you, you use therapy as a crutch, and it keeps you in the wounded experience instead of helping you to transcend that experience. Now, in Lisa's case, she was sitting, like many of you, looking through books and notes and papers and journals and all the things that she thought was going to lead her to the healed experience. And what we presented to her was the yin-yang sign in order to demonstrate to her the One. And what we asked her to do was to consider why certain experiences happened for her, if she could extract a message, lesson, and gift from very, very challenging experiences like narcissistic abuse and the loss of her brother and her husband. Now, what she found when she focused on the yin-yang sign was that she agreed to be paired with two individuals that would leave the earth much earlier than expected, two individuals who loved her unconditionally, so that through that loss, she could learn to love herself. And through the narcissistic abuse that she experienced, she needed to know what it was like to be unloved and alone to truly understand the frequency of love and what it was like to be all one. And while these experiences were devastatingly challenging, she transcended them through extracting the messages, lessons, and gifts. And through that expanded awareness, she was able to choose or create a new experience, leaving the wounded experience behind. So healing is transcendence. It is not putting things together as they are broken, because all is one. You have to transcend the wound in order to return back to the One and the awareness of the whole. And when you return to the awareness of the whole, you realize that you can choose any individuated part of the whole in order to have a new experience, in order to be God focused on something other than that which you do not desire.